Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahweh Shah, Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Kuhak Kadash. All praises, honor, glory, love, respect, faith, and power, and trust, and all credit to my Heavenly Father Yahweh and my Heavenly Big Brother Yahweh Shah. Thank you so much for what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're going to do. Double honors to your apostles and elders and bishops of GMS, great millstone who I learned from, and all the men scattered all over the world, teaching this truth and none but the truth in the name, spirit, and the power of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. Trying to put a spiritual bug in your Hebrew Israelites' ears, you so-called black Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Seminole Indians, and your speckled birds. And what is a speckled bird? They'd be a Hebrew Israelite that look like some of the heathen nations, like, for example, a Hebrew Israelite that look like a so-called white person or a so-called Chinese person, etc., etc. Got some videos lined up about America's economy looking like shit, still is. And it's keep getting worse and worse, and people getting laid off, they're closing up factories and locking people out of their factories, and hey, things are going under, baby. You better be looking for Yahweh or seeking Yahweh Shema Shah now, because the Lord is like God. He got the spiritual wrecking ball hitting the shit out of America. Anyway, I'm gonna play these videos. I'm gonna get into the scripture, my best ability, say whatever God say through spirit, power, Yahweh Shema Shah, the Holy Spirit, Kuhak Kadash, Lord, wouldn't be on me. Let's get it.
Is locked out of work. Cargill shut down its Fort Morgan plant Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tyne Morgan. Haley is out in the field. 1,700 people are waiting to return to the job. Teamsters Local 455 says Cargill has, quote, held its employees hostage. Many are from Haiti, Somalia, and Central and South America. The union says its current contract provides a little room for change or improvement. Cargill believes its $33.4 million contract is fair and competitive. There have been months of bargaining and no deal has been reached. The plant has not harvested since April 23rd, nearly a month ago. Cargill says this halted processing is not impacting its weekly harvest numbers. The production is moving to other plants instead. The cattle futures do react to headlines like a lockout at a beef plant, and Cargill has not dealt with labor issues since a major strike in 1987. Michelle Rook is putting the impact into perspective for us today.
While it wasn't the sole factor pressuring the cattle market on Wednesday, there was somewhat of a knee-jerk bearish reaction in the futures to the news of the lockout at the Cargill facility. Now, the beef plant had not been slaughtering for more than a month, and the market had not reacted due to excess shackle space by packers. So once the initial headline reaction wears off, market analysts tell me the selling pressure is likely to be short-lived. With the cattle market at historical highs, the futures have been sensitive to any bearish headlines. So the lockout at the Cargill beef plant in Fort Morgan, Colorado did trigger some knee-jerk selling by fund and headline-driven algorithm traders.
You're talking about a very large facility, at least by Cargill standards, one that when they're at capacity can kill 4,700 cattle a day. You would think that the industry would be a little bit worried. It might affect the cash market, maybe that Western Nebraska, Colorado market, maybe more than anything else.
However, Koima says the market reaction would have been much more severe if beef processing capacity wasn't running at a surplus.
We are so over shackle space capacity for what the available supply is, or at least what we're showing as our available supply is that, yes, it would probably make a lot bigger difference otherwise.
Further proof comes from the fact the Fort Morgan facility has been dark for weeks with little market reaction.
I am fascinated by the fact that we've been on strike or they haven't been killing for a month, for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And the market just does not even care about it. It barely gets a mention.
And that also goes back to the fundamentals of a 70-year low in the cattle herd.
The numbers are that tight, okay? In a different environment where we had more cattle to go around, this would be a much, much bigger and more bearish thing.
So Koima thinks it may only have a short-term impact on the cattle futures. The longer-term concern is the impact of negative beef packing margins on the processing industry.
It's that long-term impact.
Well, you got nothing but Jake out there working, doing the hard labor.
No, that's the worry with packer margins being this much in the red, that, okay, is somebody going to close a plant? Because obviously we are severely tight.
And the packing industry already saw one casualty with Tyson's Lexington, Nebraska plant closure in January of this.
Yeah, it had to be an Israelite. Well, yeah, that shit, they're hitting financial problems. Oh, well. And it's going to increase the famine. They ain't processing meat like they normally do. Then whatever. Anyway, next video.
From the #1 rated brand in...
For thousands of Meta employees, the workday never really began. They were told to stay at home. There were no meetings with managers. There was just silence. And then, at a time that was 4 a.m. in the morning, emails began to arrive.
You know what? This ain't about... Well, it's not just America. Meta is bigger than that. They're global. Well, anyway, you know what? Fuck this video. I'll play it for you.
And the emails only said one line: you no longer work here. Meta has reportedly begun its workforce reduction program, but what has unsettled people is not just the scale of the cuts, it's also this very cold efficiency of how the sackings were carried out. Employees reportedly realized that the work-from-home directive was not flexibility, it was actually a way to avoid scenes in office corridors, emotional farewells, and also visible panic. Inside Meta, morale has already cracked. Reports suggest that the workers were quietly collecting free snacks and spare laptop charges before the official announcement. And some reports even say that employees feared internal tracking systems, monitoring keystrokes and mouse movements. And tech companies, especially Meta, were once seen as the ultimate dream destination, with lavish campuses, sky-high salaries and promises of changing the world. But that promise has now raised some very, very uncomfortable questions for an entire generation that was raised on the promise of the dream job. What happens when the industry that sold stability, innovation and prestige suddenly treats its workers as expendable overhead? Now, are we entering into an era where loyalty means little and even top performers can disappear through an automated email sent before sunrise? The layoffs at Meta feel bigger than one company's restructuring. They symbolize a shift in corporate culture, a culture that prioritizes ruthless optimization. And just recently, Standard Chartered had also announced some major job cuts that will affect thousands of back-office roles. The banking giant has said that it will target low-end manual work in favor of automation and AI. For employees across the world, the fear is no longer just losing a job. It is about losing faith in the idea that these jobs were even secure to begin with.
Yup. Let's get some more news. What is this about? The economy getting worse?
Donald Trump has a line he uses at rallies. He's used it for years. He used it again at the State of the Union in February. We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. On Tuesday, the 30-year U.S. Treasury yield hit 5.2%, an 18-year high, the highest since before the 2008 financial crisis. The 10-year yield touched 4.7%, a 16-month high. The bond market is definitely winning, and it is getting very, very tired. Amel, I have a PhD in computer science, and I use data analysis to spot patterns in geopolitics and economics, and the pattern here is no longer a spike, it is a staircase. Last year, I made a video about the 30-year yield crossing 5% for the first time since 2007. That was a milestone. This week, it's at 5.2%, and this is not a milestone, this is just a trajectory at this point. The bond market did not panic and recover, it panicked and kept climbing. Each week, the number is higher than the week before, and each week, the structural damage compounds because every dollar the U.S. government borrows at these rates stays expensive for 30 years. Jim LeCamp, Senior Vice President at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, said on CNBC's Squawk on the Street on Tuesday, it's a real problem. When we start this year, everybody expected rates to come down. That was part of the bull case. Now it looks like we're going to see a rate hike. At the start of 2026, the consensus expectation was that interest rates would fall. 5 months later, the consensus is shifting towards rates going up. The entire monetary policy outlook of the world's largest economy has reversed direction in under 6 months, driven almost entirely by a war that the administration chose to start. Oil prices remain above $110 a barrel. Brent crude is at 110.38. West Texas Intermediate is at 108. The Iran war began in late February. Oil has risen roughly 80% since. The Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee, the government's own panel of bond market experts, warned on May 5th that energy prices have surged past their pandemic-era peak and that inflation expectations have jumped by 75 basis points in the U.S. and 100 basis points in Europe since the conflict began. Consumer prices in April rose at an annual rate of 3.8%, the highest in nearly 3 years. Producer inflation soared past expectations to its highest since December 2022. The data is not exactly ambiguous. Inflation is re-accelerating, and the cause is traceable to a single policy decision. If you've been following this channel's coverage of the U.S. fiscal situation, this video is the update to the one I published last week. The numbers have gotten worse in every category, and the feedback loop I described, war drives oil up, oil drives inflation drives yields drive interest costs up, interest costs drive deficits up, deficits drive borrowing up, borrowing at higher yields drive next year's interest rates bill even higher, is now visibly operating in real time. Mohit Kumar, chief economist and strategist at Jefferies, told CNBC's Europe Early Edition on Tuesday that even if a Middle East deal materializes, oil is not going back to pre-war levels. We think it's going to be 25 to 30% higher in 6 months' time. He then identified a second pressure. Every government is going to provide subsidies for households for fuel, which means more borrowing, and that's pressure at the long end of the curve. So the war makes energy expensive. Governments borrow to subsidize the energy costs. The borrowing pushes yields higher. Higher yields make the borrowing more expensive, which requires even more borrowing. The loop does not have an exit. It has a speed setting, and it's accelerating. If you're trying to understand how to read through market data like this and see what the structural dynamics underneath actually show, my book, Awake the Practice of Critical Thinking in an Age of Soft Lines, is available as an ebook and audiobook. Subscribers get 10% off, and you can grab the first chapter for free in the description links below. The U.S. government is currently paying $1 trillion per year in interest on roughly $39 trillion of national debt. That was the number at 5%. At 5.2%, the marginal cost of every new bond issued is higher. Every treasury auction that clears at these yields locks in a rate for the life of that bond, 30 years for the long bond, 10 years for the benchmark note. The bonds auctioned last week at 5.046% will pay that rate until 2056. The bonds clearing this week at 5.2% will pay that rate until 2056 as well, but at a higher cost for every single dollar. So that is not exactly a market that is pricing in temporary disruption. This is a market that is pricing in a new structural reality where inflation stays elevated, deficits stay very wide, and the Federal Reserve cannot cut rates because cutting rates would pour fuel on an inflationary fire that is already burning. Fed funds futures are now pricing in a 25% probability of a rate hike by the end of December, up from nearly zero at the start of the year. The implied probability of a rate cut has effectively collapsed. The new Federal Reserve Chair, Kevin Warsh, who was confirmed by the Senate last week, inherits what multiple analysts have described as the most divided Federal Open Market Committee in more than 30 years. Trump continues to publicly push for rate cuts. The bond market is telling the Fed the very opposite. Peter Bookvar, Chief Investment Officer of One Point BFG Wealth Partners, wrote on Friday, long end rates are now in control of monetary policy. I wish Kevin Warsh the best, but he will still be subject to his surrounding macro circumstances. The surrounding macro circumstances are these: a war that has pushed oil above $110, inflation that is re-accelerating towards 4%, a deficit projected to exceed $1.9 trillion this year, interest payments consuming 19 cents of every tax dollar collected, a bond market demanding the highest yields in 18 years to lend the government money, and a president who describes all of this as winning. We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning.
Might win so much you might get a chip implant. Yeah, in the mark of the beast. You win so hard, you get a chip implant plus. Well, guess what? The grand prize winner, which will be everybody who gets a damn chip implant, will get nuclear fire for their ass. Oh yeah.
30-year yield started this year below 4.5%. It is now at 5.2%. If this is winning, the bond market would like to know what losing looks like, because at this rate, it might find out by September. The prediction is that the 30-year yield does not fall below 5% this year, I think. But once again, these videos are not financial advice. Please do not change your positions off the back of them. The 10-year probably settles above 4.5% as a new baseline. The Fed does not cut rates in 2026, probably, and the probability of a hike continues to rise through the summer as oil remains elevated. The interest bill on the national debt exceeds the Congressional Budget Office's $1 trillion projection by at least 5 to 8%, and each monthly inflation print, each treasury auction, each social media post threatening Iran adds another step to the staircase that the bond market is climbing, with the U.S. economy strapped to its back. But while the U.S. bond market climbs toward territory it has not seen since the great financial crisis, Europe signed a trade deal this week that gives its businesses the one thing American markets cannot offer: predictability. I made a video on how Europe approved the Turnberry Agreement and then kept...
Spring, the unofficial new year for tool people. Celebrate spring savings at Harbor Freight.
All right, welcome to the show, y'all. Hope everybody out there is having a great day. Prepare yourselves, because we are all over the map today. In just a second, it is getting really, really bad out there. I mean, the economy is falling apart. MAGA's numbers are like at historic lows, numbers I've never seen before covering U.S. politics. So we'll dive into that. We also have Joe Rogan's friends are completely and utterly done with Donald Trump and MAGA, and it's now getting awkward because Rogan himself is still not only pro-Trump and pro-MAGA, I mean, he's like one of the insiders. He's in the club. He's having phone calls with Trump and texting Trump and all this stuff. So got a lot to talk about there. We also have a new Trump scheme is unveiled. He's effectively trying to invade Bolivia. And now we have massive protests that are erupting. He wants to go after the former left-wing president of Bolivia, Evo Morales. We'll talk about that. Christian nationalists have also totally lost their minds. I have some wild clips to show you. And we have a severe Ebola outbreak that's exploding as Trump is failing miserably at basic containment services in the U.S. That's RFK Jr. and on as well. Remember, y'all, this here. So let's start with Trump's numbers when it comes to Hispanics, and this is to fear
that Johnny B.
Man, I thought this nigga gonna start talking about what the title says. Oh no, the thumbnail. The economic crash is here, I guess. I don't know, but I thought it was gonna be nothing but just that. Now he's talking about some his polls, is who's supporting. There's a flying fuck about this shit, nigga. Don't give a fuck about that shit. Now here we go. We got something right here.
The economy, bro. Like, people are still underestimating just how bad this current moment is and just how ugly it's gonna get. So let me walk you through some of that here. Quote, we're facing the largest supply shortage of lubricating fluids in the modern history of America. Realistic middle-of-the-road estimates are for our average available supply in this product category to drop by 40%. It's an internal AutoZone memo, which is basically saying, like, hey, bro, we're kind of running out of this thing known as motor oil. Like, what? Yes. Understand something, guys. We had an oil shock that wasn't as severe as this one that happened in the 1970s. That led to rationing. That led to, hey, if your license plate ends with an odd number, you can only get gas on these particular days of the week. If it ends in an even number, you can only get gas on these other particular days of the week. They were rationing. There are 80 countries already that put into place emergency measures to try to conserve energy. 80 countries already did that. Where are the fucking idiots who are like, we don't give a fuck, bro. We're going to ride the Titanic right into that motherfucking iceberg. We're going to ride the ship right into the rocks. So they're acting like there is no problem here, but there are...
Yeah, they only doing it to lead people to them microchip implants. Heck yeah. Drive these damn Americans, drive this economy down, and then people gonna be in a pissy, shitty situation. Anyway.
There's a massive problem, and you already see gas is already near $5 a gallon, which also is an input for every other element of the economy. So what are you going to look at? Are you going to look at grocery prices that skyrocket even more? Are you going to look at shortages in some place, for example, because the trucking to get the food to rural communities, it's not worth it for companies to do it, so nobody takes the contracts? Again, people are not truly factoring in how ugly this can get, okay? And when AutoZone is telling you, by the way, we have a 40% drop in having fucking motor oil, that should be a little bit of a wake-up call to everybody, shouldn't it? ABC News says grocery prices in the U.S. soared faster in April than any month in nearly 4 years, driving up the cost of everything, from frankfurters to tomatoes to cupcakes, according to government data. Holy cow. Then we also have this. Senator Peter Welch says the Trump administration is essentially banning wind projects on private land. Energy prices are higher than ever right now. Why would President Trump actively work against lowering energy bills? I'll answer that question. It's either because he's a Manchurian candidate and he's trying to destroy this country, or he's the dumbest person ever sitting.
Yeah, I mean, no team. It's pretty much all, but they're doing this on purpose. There's no wisdom in teaming, but they're doing this on purpose so people can get them chip implants. Crash the economy, destroy America's economy, to bring in digital currency with the chip implants.
The White House. There's your answer, Senator Peter Welch. But yes, Canary Media points out, it's a de facto moratorium on wind power in the U.S. More than 250 wind projects on private land are stalled now that the Defense Department has halted once routine reviews. So stop and think about that. Not only are there no more public wind projects, there are no private wind projects either. So at the same time, Trump allowing you in Latinist, pedophile, rapist, con man, criminal is. Elon Musk is projected to become a trillionaire in the near future. All right, how about this? As family homelessness hits record highs, school districts are offering parking lots as safe sites for students and their families to sleep at night. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk is projected to become a trillionaire in the near future. Let me repeat that. Elon Musk is projected to become a trillionaire in the near future as family homelessness is hitting a record high and people are sleeping in school parking lots. This is a broken system. This is a broken economy. But you know what? Maybe it's not. Maybe this is exactly how capitalism functions.
Pretty much, this is not your rest for you Israelites. Let me get some. Dog here trying to eat up all my tater chips, man. Not my tater chips, tortilla chips. I'm trying to eat some in peace while I'm watching this video and doing a video. Now she looking over at me like, look at that. Hey, I'm gonna give me some. Dripping drool, messing up my floors. Shit. Michael chapter 2 verse 10. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted, it shall destroy you even with a sword destruction. Yeah. Why don't you choke on a tater chip? Or tortilla chip.
Maybe the answer is to tax the fuck out of the billionaires and soon to be trillionaires and take that money and you...
Oh my goodness. Who's gonna tax these niggas? They're the ones who controlling this fucking shit, nigga. First off, the bankers, the Rothschilds, or whoever the fuck else. Anyway, what a dumbass. I play a little bit of this video because these people be stuck on this left-right bullshit. Who gives a fuck? Whoever you choose, you're still gonna lose. Let's get to the next video.
Here in the United States, we are about to experience something that we haven't really experienced lately. And in today's video, we're going to talk about that, but I want to give you a couple warnings. These are massive warnings. One from Bank of America, the second one from Costco. But I'm also going to address what Target is now doing that, again, not a warning, but could be concerning. So we'll address all this in today's video. Now, before I get into the update, if you enjoy these daily updates, do me a favor, go ahead, hit that like button, and now let's begin. So first off, what is happening? Well, just recently, Bank of America, they put out something that they call their consumer checkpoint. And this is the warning that they're giving us, okay? They are saying that people are not spending money like they used to. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but Bank of America has all the information. They know exactly where you spend money, what you're spending money on, how much you're spending. If this is a pattern, they know all of this. They know if you're paying with cash. They know if you're paying with a credit card, a debit card. They have all this information. This is critical. Bank of America is saying that people are not spending money on extras. This means things that are not a must-have. I want to show you something, though. Look at this right here. It says spending growth was strong in April, according to Bank of America internal data. Total credit and debit card spending per household rose by 4.8% year over year, up from 4.3% year over year in March. It says excluding gasoline, card spending was still a strong 4% year over year. However, spending growth did slow in April from March across multiple discretionary, nice-to-have categories. This is what was in their report. Now, here's the reason why it's a big deal. This is a sign of what's coming, okay? Remember, we can't predict the future, but we can see ahead and kind of predict what could happen, and this is likely. Listen to this. So lately, the American people have been spending very little on entertainment, okay? There's limited spending here. That's actually key. We also know that not spending money right now on things like services is going to impact millions of people as well, because now these service industries aren't going to be reaping the benefits here. There's no money. It's an issue. We're seeing right now, okay, comedians are canceling some of their tours, bands are canceling tours, festivals are canceling or downsizing some of their scheduled events as well, all because people have stopped spending money. We've stopped. We maxed out our credit cards, okay? That's a huge issue. But that's the warning coming from Bank of America, is to expect this K-shaped economy to continue, where the lower income earners, they're going to still continue to struggle a little bit. The higher income earners, well, they're going to be successful. They're going to see their portfolios are going up. They're happy. They're smiling. They're doing just fine. But I want to give you the warning from Costco. This one's actually pretty interesting. People have stopped buying fresh food. Just stop buying it. Think about this for a second. When you go into a grocery store, you're buying food for the week or the month. How often are you buying something like frozen vegetables, frozen fruit, whether it's to make a smoothie or you're just going to thaw it out and you eat it as is, right? How often are you buying frozen poultry? You're buying chicken, you're buying frozen ground beef, you're buying, let's see, frozen hamburger patties, fish, right? What are you buying? That's the question here. Because, and I'll tell you this, over the past several months, I think my family has been buying a little more frozen, not necessarily.
Alright, anyway, shit getting expensive. Food too. Let's get to the next one.
If your kitchen counter is always a mess of different bowls, colanders, and graters,
Well, the American economy now has a new slogan, buy now, pay later. Consumers are hurting, so they kind of have to. There's now new polls showing that 51% of Americans are having to use installment plans for just regular online purchases. Now, this is not luxury items, a leather coat. These are things that people need, like an air conditioner, a heater, something to fix their home. Another 17% saying they're using this occasionally, especially among lower income households. 37% are using these installment plans compared to 21% of higher income family. Now, that's because the economy is just too hard to live. Now, the U.S. government and officials in the Trump administration, when they're asked about how hard the economy has become, especially fuel prices, gas prices, living expenses, they kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, we needed to have this pain because Iran and nuclear weapons. That's kind of how it is. Now, credit card payments are...
You know damn well these states can get an advantage of us for we're not ignorant of the divisor. It's all about getting these people them microchips.
Having higher installment plan, again, credit card use, higher installment plan use. This is how desperate it's become for the working class. And why do they have to do this? Because the value of the U.S. dollar is plummeting by the day due to government action. Now, a real indicator of trouble, not the stock market, which continues to sort of bounce around based on emotion and the perversion of government messaging. But no, the Treasury yields is where we get a real indicator. Now, 30-year Treasury hit a 20-year high recently. The 10-year Treasury spiked to 15 months high. That means that the government's own debt is skyrocketing along with consumer debt. And in fact, it leads it. Now, a Treasury yield is basically what interest rate does the U.S. government have to pay to borrow money? Now, you know that we're going to war for billions of dollars. We don't have it. We're having to borrow to do it, and we're borrowing at higher and higher rates because we're not good for it. Collectively, we're not good for it. And because U.S. Treasuries are considered the risk-free benchmark, almost every other interest rate is built on top of it. So your mortgage, business loans, auto loans, credit card, corporate debt, commercial real estate financing, even developing country borrowing, developing countries who have nothing to do with this will hurt because of it. So think about how unfair that is. It's harder for consumers to borrow money because the government is over-borrowing for their own priorities, not yours, clearly, and that will stagnate the economy and weaken your purchasing power. So if you make $5, you can't buy very much with that $5, even less than you could yesterday. Now, when the 10 or the 30-year Treasury yield spikes, the government is paying more interest, companies pay more interest, and consumers pay more interest, and a heavily indebted system starts straining. Well, starts is the wrong word.
strains further beyond even comprehension. Now, this is what former Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson calls the doom loop. It's a scary feedback loop where governments run massive debts. They issue more bonds to finance that debt. Investors are nervous, so they want higher yield, and deficits worsen even more. Governments issue more debt. Investors demand higher yields. I mean, how long can we do this, right? It's almost like you just keep going deeper and deeper underwater, so you just swim down. And now the government, of course, is spending that money that it has to borrow, then using taxpayer money to manage that debt, while the dollars that us taxpayers hold continue to be worth less. It's more than typical government waste than we had to deal with when Trump took office in 2024. This is a massively expensive war. The Pentagon's putting that dollar amount at $29 billion so far. That has got to be conservative is not the word. They're saying it's $29 billion, but a lot of times they sneak in other government contracts under there that we don't even know about. So let's say $29 billion and pad it with, I'd say at least $5 billion. They're clearly prepping us for another military operation in Cuba. That also will not come on the cheap. So given what this has to do to your savings, your purchasing power, and the economy that you have to navigate, who would say this was worth it? Who in their right minds? I'm just asking. And what does that mean for consumers? Of course, rising prices. We see the CPI prices are up. This is, and so far we're only talking about debt, the debt-ridden economy. We're not even talking about the supply chain, which we've talked about already, tenuous at best. So yeah, it's a hot mess.
Thank you so much for watching Redacted. We'd love for you to...
Yep. Let me see what we got. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse, I'll start with 5. No, I'll start with 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Talking about the just being the elect of Israel. But we live by the faith of Yahweh Shema Shah, not by Esau, but this is about Esau now, this part right here. First, number 4, this part of number 4 was about Esau. This part is not about Esau. This part is talk about Esau. Yeah, also because he transgressive by wine, by his philosophy. He is a proud man. Neither keep him at home, he's always in your business, who enlarges his desire as hell and as death. So he's trying to make your life a living hell and deadly. From pretty much everything you eat, drink, breathe, fucking live is deadly. This nigga made a shitty environment for you, and we want out of it. The only way out of it through Yahweh Shema Shah, getting us out of here. And cannot be satisfied. This nigga can't be satisfied with anything. He might get a little joy by killing somebody or sacrificing babies or eating a baby or raping a baby or something. But that's not enough. He got to do more and more and more wickedness. But gather unto him all nations and harpen unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increase of which is not his. He's taking shit that don't belong to him, and he want to be proud. He's a proud ass nigger to believe that whatever he's stolen and take is his, and he believe it's rightfully his. That's how much of a nigger he is. And I'm talking about Esau, even so-called white man, but he ain't white. He's red. He's a baby dick sucking Jewish faggot nigger, Amalek. How long? And to him that lendeth himself with thick clay. That's dead. Next video.
Help. What's happening? I'm being stretched out. So it's basically an inversion table.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, I would like to mention something very important. Recently, YouTube has shadow banned this channel. Views have dropped dramatically, as many of you have noticed, and it was even more concerning. Many of you shared in the comments that you had been unsubscribed without you even knowing. And I can certainly see that as well. Some days the channel loses a couple hundred subscribers at a time, which never happened before. And I know for a fact that I don't really say anything to upset a large number of people at a time to make them want to leave. So hopefully this channel does not get taken down altogether, but as we all know, nothing is guaranteed. But that is what I will be preparing for in any case, by shifting my focus towards Substack and Patreon. I use both platforms interchangeably. I think they're great. They're similar in many different ways. You will already find exclusive articles there. You will find ad-free videos, ad-free interviews for my subscribers, and soon you will see live Q&A and other ways to get engaged and involved. So I will drop the links to my Substack and Patreon below, and I do hope to see many of you, if not all of you, join those two platforms so that we have a way to stay in touch, to stay connected.
And what about Rumble? Because she said she'd be on Rumble too. Because she forgot about that one.
it if there is a purge on YouTube. All right, now let's get into the topic of today's video. As a prominent American economist, Michael Hudson, mentioned in our recent interview, the global financial system has traditionally operated on one major assumption. And what is that assumption? Well, the assumption was there would always be strong demand for US government debt. The United States could run enormous deficits, it could issue massive amounts of treasury bonds, and investors around the world would still continue buying them. But now, there are growing signs that one of the most important foreign buyers of US debt may begin pulling back, and that buyer is Japan. Japanese investors collectively hold around $1 trillion in US treasuries, making Japan the largest foreign holder of American debt. For years, Japanese money poured into US financial markets because investors had few attractive options at home. They didn't really have that many alternatives. Japanese government bonds offered extremely low returns for decades, and in some cases, interest rates in Japan were even negative. So that pushed Japanese pension funds, Japanese insurance companies, and large institutional investors to search overseas for better returns, for more money, especially in the United States, because traditionally the US debt has been viewed as effectively a safe haven. Well, but now things are changing. Japan's financial system is undergoing a historic transformation. Inflation has returned to Japan after decades of stagnation and deflation, and the Bank of Japan has started raising interest rates aggressively compared to its past policies. Yields on 10-year and 30-year Japanese government bonds have surged to their highest levels since the 1990s. And this is a dramatic...
I know this is, she talking about Japan, but it also affects America. I mean, I could just retitle this. Well, it's mostly videos about America economy, but man, I keep it like that, but whatever, anyway.
Dramatic change for a country that spent years trapped in an ultra-low rate environment. The Bank of Japan is now expected to tighten monetary policy again next month, potentially raising benchmark interest rate from 0.75% to 1%. And while those numbers may seem small by American standards, for Japan, the central bank spent years fighting weak growth and deflation with near zero and even negative interest rates, as I mentioned earlier, and now rising inflation and higher energy costs, thanks Trump, are forcing policymakers to move into the opposite direction. The Iran war has played a very important role in the shift because rising oil prices are increasing inflationary pressure inside Japan. Since Japan imports much of its energy, higher oil prices quickly feed into the broader economy. So they push prices up. At the same time, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is increasing government spending in an effort to stimulate economic growth and to offset the economic shock that is caused by higher energy costs. More government spending combined with rising oil prices is creating additional inflationary pressure, which makes further rate hikes more likely. So as Japanese yields rise, investors are beginning to reconsider whether they still need to send money overseas. They would like to have it back home. So for years, the logic behind buying US treasuries was very simple. Why keep money in Japanese bonds paying almost nothing when US bonds offered far greater returns? But now, as you can see, Japanese government bonds are starting to offer more attractive yields, while also avoiding the currency risks and geopolitical uncertainties that are associated with overseas investments. There are already signs that this shift has begun. It's not something that's going to happen in the distant future. It has already begun. March reportedly saw the largest monthly inflow ever into Japanese sovereign bond funds, suggesting that investors are increasingly bringing capital back into domestic markets. For example, Mark Dowding...
Anyway, I don't want to play this no more. She ain't talking too much about America going to shit. Anyway, let's get to the next one.
The new way to own your brand with Wix Harmony. Create a...
Millions of Americans should prepare for credit card companies to cut you off very soon. If you are using credit cards, you're relying on debt to pay for some of your bills, to put food on the table, and just to keep a roof over your head, well, I hate to tell you, but things could go from bad to worse. Here's the reason why. Look at this right here. It says Fed officials see rate hike ahead if inflation stays elevated. Now, what exactly does this mean? Well, here's the concern. The Federal Reserve is likely going to raise interest rates. And they're going to do so because we are already anticipating the inflation rate to go from 3.8% up over 4% here in the next month. On top of that, over the course of the summer, there are many economists that are predicting inflation could actually go up over 6%. Come the end of the summer, we could see inflation at 6%.
Inflation at 6%? That sounds so fucking small. Come on, man. I don't even know how they come up with a percentage anyway. But whatever, everything gonna get expensive as hell. That's all shit. Yeah. It just sounds like 6% is like it's just small. Anyway.
The only way to bring it down is to tighten borrowing, to make things more expensive, and so people stop spending money. Now, how does this bring the banks in? Well, I want to show you something. It says, well, mortgage rates hit 7% as borrowing costs keep...
Well, yeah, that's pretty high. I'm paying like 3 something, but still, yeah, that's pretty high.
Keep climbing. The expectation is that mortgage rates
should be paying 0%. Shit, yeah, you should be paying 0. But they can't make their money. They gotta make some kind of profit.
were supposed to go down. They're now going back up. They're the highest they've been in several years. But this is the reason why I bring this to your attention. Many people use credit cards to pay for food, to pay for their utility bills, to pay for just about everything. But now banks are warning their customers that they could see their account get closed, they could see their credit limit decrease. They are going to have tighter borrowing guidelines. I talked to a friend of mine who is a lender, and one of the things that he said is he had to turn down a long-time client, and he had to turn him down simply because they're tightening their standards. And one of the things that, their standards, one of their requirements, not only do they have to have proper work history, you have to have income at a certain level, you have to have the right credit score, all these different things. He said one of the things that popped up was a red flag. He got denied. A long-time client. This person's never been denied. He had to deny it because their standards are changing. And again, this is the reason why I'm bringing it to your attention. If you use credit cards, you are likely going to see if your credit score, your credit report is starting to get a little bit questionable, your credit score is coming down, you could see your credit card company lower your actual spending limit. So maybe instead of $10,000, they bring it all the way down to like $5,000 or $3,000. That's what you could see very soon. Not only that though, they could lower your limit, they could also close your account. Here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. I have a friend who just had his account closed. Again, he's had this account for a very long time. Over 16 years, he's had this account open. They closed it down and they sent him a letter. This was just over the past week. They sent him a letter stating that he was a higher risk customer. That's it. He was just deemed higher risk. Now, here's the issue. Everybody's going to be higher risk. As we see rates go up, borrowing costs increase. As borrowing costs increase, we're likely going to see layoffs. As layoffs happen, we're likely going to see businesses close. Your local economy could potentially change. This is normal. This is what we normally see. But again, I've been telling you this for the past year, where we are going to see some massive shifts. So not only are we seeing interest rates potentially going up, and again, we're still about a month away from this, but interest rates are going to go up. Okay, that's most likely what's going to happen. And not only that, but we're also seeing at the same time, we are seeing layoffs happen because some of these companies like Meta are deciding to lay off employees to secure cash, to take that cash and invest it into AI. And then they're moving 7,000 workers into AI initiatives that are going to, again, help propel the business for the future. So not only are we seeing interest rates rise, layoffs are happening as we speak. Okay, inflation is still an issue. Okay, it's still an issue. Even though we're going to increase rates, inflation is still going to be a problem because we have a war in the Middle East, we have a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and oil is, well, in short supply. According to experts, they are saying that here in the United States, we are potentially going to hit bottom of our supply, whether the bottom of the barrel stock. We're going to hit that likely within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Once that happens, we are going to see gas prices spike. When gas prices spike, then we're likely going to see costs for everything go up. So when you have to pay more for food, and yet the average person cannot afford fresh vegetables because it's not part of their budget, yeah, expect we are going to see some pain. So here's what you need to understand. At this time, okay, there's a few things you need to watch for. First, just on your own, are you seeing your credit card companies, are they closing your accounts, or are they actually lowering your credit limit? If one of those two things is happening, okay, that's a sign of what's coming. Third thing, if the Federal Reserve comes out and raises interest rates, okay, they're only going to do this if we see inflation go up. So within the next 2 weeks, or technically 3 weeks, we are going to have our new CPI report. I promise, on that date, I will do a whole video on it, explaining what's happening, why it happened, which is probably because of gas prices, but then what we're going to see moving forward. So these are just a handful of things you are going to see on your own, okay? But I promise one thing, I will be here, I will fill you in.
Anyway.
Well, Americans keep hearing that inflation is under control, the economy is strong, but for millions of people, it doesn't feel that way at all. Grocery prices are sky high, insurance costs are soaring, and Americans are now carrying massive amounts of credit card debt. New report out this week showing delinquencies up to an all-time high. Families are increasingly relying on debt just to keep up with everyday living expenses. At the same time, investors right now are watching precious metals markets closely as concerns continue to grow over inflation, the weakening purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. Hell, Alaska just became the latest state to now allow gold and silver as a legal tender in that state, moving away from, even U.S. states are moving away from the U.S. dollar. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve appears trapped between trying to fight inflation, trying to prevent a deeper economic.
Yeah, it's funny. Certain states, I know Florida doing that. I think Texas, did they do that too? Well, they doing that, but who out there what citizens out there in those states, live in those states, actually own gold and silver? It ain't that many. So why start doing that now? But are they even promoting? No, they ain't even. The price of gold and silver is not even shit. The live folk can't buy that shit. They could have bought it like 20 years ago. Yeah, a lot of people would have had a little gold and silver at that 20 years ago. But right now, not right now. But hey man, you know what time it is. It's also leading to them chip implants.
Much slowdown right now. Consumers are feeling squeezed from every direction. Heck, Costco just rolled out new buckets of wine. Yeah, but that's how bad things are getting, because you know, like new lockdowns are probably coming, so they're gonna sell buckets of wine. Now, what the hell is going on? We have a lot to unpack today in the U.S. economy. So many moving pieces. And
people can drink their sorrows away, or try to, when they lock down.
I know someone who watches it very, very closely is our good friend Kevin Demerit. He's the CEO of Lear Capital. Obviously very close to the precious metals markets, and that's what you guys do at Lear, from silver and gold. But man, Kevin, I just want to start maybe talking about this debt right now and this latest report about credit card delinquencies. The percent of balance 90 plus days delinquent by loan type, and you can see credit cards now skyrocketing to an all-time high for delinquencies. People just putting like basic necessities on their credit cards.
Yeah, this is the same thing we saw back in tops of markets. 1999, 2000, you saw credit card debt skyrocketing, delinquencies were skyrocketing. 2007 going into 2008, same type of thing. I think this one's a lot worse because you have the inflation part, higher interest rates, higher mortgage costs, car payments, things like that. And, there was a great story. Well, I don't know if it was a great story, but it was a story about people having to buy now, pay later, even for groceries. So you're right. They're putting it on their credit cards. They're going down to the store, buying what they need now, and then having to pay it off over 3 or 4 or 5 payments. That's the situation that we're in. But when you look around, the people who are printing money, the central banks, are buying gold. This is the biggest tell in the market to me, when the people that actually are printing our money all around the world are saying, hey, I'm not sure I trust my paper money in the bank. I kind of want to move that over and buy some gold with it. So I don't think they're anywhere near kind of tamping down inflation, and it'll be a bigger problem. At the end of this year, I think we're going to start to see, with the war and all the other printing that's been going on, that inflation is definitely not under control.
We just had a guest on this week who said, I'm imploring your audience, please protect your families and get some precious metals, and make sure you own tangible.
And this funny thing, what he just said, people are pulling their money out the bank and buying precious metals. But are you buying it by having it shipped to your residence and you holding on to the shit? Or are you buying it from somebody who's selling it and allowing them to hold on to it? Because that's like, you might as well burn your money up, because shit, you buying some shit from somebody and they claim they're holding the gold and silver for you. Man, stop. Shit. You better off holding it, because if you don't hold it, you don't own it.
Things right now because of what's coming. And I just saw a report, Warren Buffett talking about the amount of people sitting in cash on the
but even if you hold it and you owning it, get ready to lose it, because you only got like a small window to probably use it before you lose it. But most important thing, the real gold and silver, the real money, is getting this truth. Trying to build a spiritual mental relationship with Yahweh Shemal Shah, try to build your faith up with Yahweh Shemal Shah. Anything else related to Yahweh Shemal Shah to get closer to them and closer to salvation. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get closer to salvation or you're going to receive salvation, but you want to pray like heaven, you receive it. That's and hope. That's your real money. All that is real money. Throwing all that stuff in your bank, a spiritual bank account up in the heavens. Nobody can take it away, but the Lord can. Yeah. Nobody can rob that bank. No. But shit, that's your real money.
Stock market side of things, that we're seeing basically the same right around the 2008-2007 collapse, that a lot of smart money is moving out of the stock market into cash, waiting to deploy that capital when this all goes belly up.
Yeah, there's so many bullish cases for gold right now and silver. And look, I'm in the market, and I don't want to sound like a salesperson here, but you have central banks, you have the deficit, you have central bank buying at record amounts, the deficits are going through the roof, you have geopolitical risks, you have currency distrust. That's a heck of a lot of fuel, directed toward, something that's an insurance policy. So can they control the inflation rates? I don't think so. I think they've, what were we in 2008? $8 trillion. We're at $39 trillion now. We're going to hit 40 trillion here fairly soon. They're estimating that the deficit for next year is about 1.9 trillion. Well, they said it was going to be 1.7 trillion this past year, and we ended up with $2.6 trillion in debt. So it's going to be bigger and bigger, and with $1 trillion in interest payments on that debt, it becomes harder and harder to control. And what people don't understand is there's a great relationship between debt and the gold price. It's a 92% correlation. So if all of us could go to Vegas and have a 92% chance of winning because of a correlation of something, we would all go and do it. So we're not really betting here. All we have to understand is that the government's not going to continue, or not going to stop printing money. If you believe they're going to stop printing money, don't own any gold. If you believe they're going to continue to print money, that the interest payment is going to increase from $1 trillion and go higher, then now's the time to own some gold. Heck, I told you right before we got on, Jim Rogers today came out and said, I have sold all my U.S. stocks. Right. I mean, he's been around forever. Great guy to watch, and just has completely sold everything, which is really against what his diversification strategies and everything have been for a long time. So I believe there's something coming. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it feels like there's another black swan event going to be around the corner for us at some point here. And just
oh yeah, and for you Israelites, all these people here, they're either experts, insiders, all that shit. They telling you this going down, but when we tell you this, of course you ain't gonna believe these people. Or you might believe Esau. But if they let it be us, shit, your ass be like, nigga, who the hell are you? We don't believe you. And they just fucking laugh. But hell, they probably laugh at these niggas and say they crazy. But hey, it's going down, man. And all I gotta say is the water Yahweh Shema Shah, all praises Yahweh Shema Shah for opening up our eyes to see and our ears to hear and the process what's going on. And making us feel like this, making us, taking this serious. Allowing us to take this serious, because this is about to be some serious shit about to go down, bro. And you're gonna need a special spirit from the Lord, from our lords, to get us through these times. Let me end this video. Let me get to this last one, but let me get a scripture. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, be your bankers and what else? Financial people that's dealing with money. Yeah, this shit's crumbling. The house of the financial stuff, and all they do is crumbling, trembling, it's collapsing, it's dying, and the Lord's gonna kill it. But until the nukes come. But right now it's crumbling. The old system is crumbling and trembling. But they're about to bring something new, and it's gonna be digital, and it's gonna be with them chip implants. But that still ain't gonna last long, and the Lord gonna kill it. Anyway, and the strong men shall bow themselves in the grinder seats, because they're few be able to work the jobs. There's not so many people out there working. Yep, they're shutting up shit. And those that look out the windows be dark and be the future of America. It ain't the rest of the world, but this is supposed to be about America. But the future of America ain't looking so good. And y'all can feel it. Y'all can see it right now. And the doors shall be shut in the streets. Big businesses, small businesses closing up. Let's see. When the sound of the grinding is low, but the sound of work being brought down low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird by the alarm clock, and all the daughters of mute shall be brought down. What does it say? Oh, and all the daughters of mute shall be brought low. I'm about to say brought down. I'm like, where am I getting down from? I don't know. Last video.
Ever pour a glass of tap water and think,
this is a Substack post from this guy named Mark A. Shyrock. And it's his post. He says, it's called 8 Weeks to Empty Shelves, 60 Days to Famine. It says what caused it and what you need to do immediately. So this is a really long article, and I'm not going to bore you through reading through this really, really long article. What I did, though, is I put together a summary of it. So I'll be going over a summary of this article, because it's an...
All right, no, I'm not going to play this video. I'm going to say it for something else, because it ain't really... oil is gonna. It's part of the financial stuff, but I don't think I don't feel this is gonna be talking about money as much. I don't know. Oh, as soon as I get here, I see it's 95%, but it's $144. All praise Yahweh Shema Shah, the Wadi Yahweh Shema Shah. Yeah, I'm not gonna play no more of this. I'm gonna stop right here. But anyway, I hope this video was edifying and informing, and hopefully you wasn't. I'm not expecting to entertain nobody. Fuck that. It's all about edification, warning you, and I feel so good to do that. And I don't want to be entertaining nobody. But anyway, sometimes I'm gonna laugh and joke and shit. You're gonna laugh and joke, but it's not no time to be no. It's time to take this shit serious, man. What's going on? So anyway, if you want to show how serious you are and showing it to the Lord, hey, one way is seeking the Lord by seeking his prophets. And that's how you could take it serious, by seeking his prophets and taking heed to what they say and try to build a spiritual mental relationship with Yahweh Shema Shah by praying Yahweh Shema Shah, praising Yahweh Shema Shah, worshiping Yahweh Shema Shah, fearing Yahweh Shema Shah, and repenting to Yahweh Shema Shah. To all the men out there pushing this truth and nothing but the truth in the name, spirit, and power of Yahweh Shema Shah, keep on preaching, keep on teaching, keep your faith and trust strong, Yahweh Shema Shah, stay humble. And for you few sisters out there taking heed, keep your faith and trust strong, Yahweh Shema Shah, stay humble, stay in order with your man. If you ain't got no man, stay in order, Yahweh Shema Shah. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect and all praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Shalom.